I swear, every time I press record, I am further and further behind. Hello, and welcome to day 3, technically, of Linktober. It's day 3, and I'm working on it on day 5. I am officially a page and a half behind. 2 pages if I'm not able to start the next one today. Which I'm hoping to. I should have enough time. It's not that late. I mean, it's only almost 7. That gives me, 5 hours to work tonight? Maybe 6? Whatever. But this one, I thought it was gonna go fast. It really did not. It took about 7 something hours. I'm not looking it up. Around 7 hours, let's call it that. The last one took 8, and the one before it took 4.5. So I think my times are just gonna be long from here on out, and I should expect 8-hour-a-day pages. So this'll be a mess. But whatever. As for this page today, it was a doozy. I had planned for this to be the big reveal of the master. You know, he's the main villain. So I had to do some big reveal. I ended up adding blood. It wasn't originally part of the plan, but it works. I wanted to get across that the master was essentially causing damage, but I didn't actually want to draw him causing damage because that would take so much more time. So I ended up going with the abstract version, but then it kind of makes the main protagonist look like he's getting chopped up. But I'll rectify that on the next page. It's fine, everything's fine. As for what I'm doing right now, was doing, I don't know. Again, I'm not sure what the timing, because I record this audio separate from the video and I can't see the video scrubbing at the same time. But what I did to speed the process up is I heavily relied on Quip Studio's 3D models and tweaked the poses over and over and over until I got exactly the right pose that I wanted. And it may have taken me 2 hours just to pose them properly. Or something like that. It felt like 2 hours. But I'm sure it saved me a lot of time on drafts and helped me get the poses a little more, not dynamic per se, but a little more accurate. From there, I just kind of went ham. And you also notice I made a little color scheme man. That is my favorite thing to do when I'm making color palettes for characters, is I like making little people of them, and I was getting sick of looking back and forth for the main protagonist's colors, like going back and forth between pages and having to turn off some layers so I can see the colors without anything over them and blah blah blah. So I just kind of made a little man. He's my little man, and he'll be on pretty much every page from now on. Also, Quip Studio was deciding really to lag today. And when I say lag, I mean lag. To the point where there's going to be several points where you see my mouse just jumping around and it doesn't look like I'm doing much of anything. That was me sitting there with my mouse, swirling it in circles, but it looks like jumping around because of the time lapse. Because I was waiting for Quip Studio to load something and you just can't see it because my recording program doesn't catch any of the additional windows Quip Studio has open. Like when I'm messing with the hue or the gradient, it doesn't see those windows. I think I'm going to switch from capturing the program to capturing the whole screen, so that you guys can see everything else. This page was honestly pretty difficult to block out in my head, because I knew roughly what I wanted to happen here in order to progress the story enough, but I wasn't sure where to put the master, where he came from. My thought was that he came from the mountains, he got to the village from the mountains, just kind of going on a rampage. From there over. So I figured he came down from the mountains via the stream in order to remain undetected. Popped up. Here comes village destruction time. And even though technically this page is the Master Destroys Village page, I'm gonna have the village actually, destroyed and on fire and all that on the next page with the main protagonist running away. And the next page is technically designed the sage, and the sage is gonna pop up, but only for one panel and not even a full body shot, because I'm using tomorrow's page as more of a transitional page so that I can kind of link things together, pun intended, between all the different little pages and stories. And the page after that is the sage telling the OC about the prophecy. So Sage is gonna get plenty of screen time, I'm sure. But for tomorrow's page, it's gonna be, okay, Sage, you're getting pushed back just ever so slightly. So that's that, or for the most part, that's what I've got done with this page. I definitely was not planning on having a full bleed panel, which for those of you who don't know, a full bleed panel is when the panel doesn't have borders. I wasn't originally planning that, as you could probably tell from my mocking up, but the more I thought about it, the more it just made sense, because this is the big dramatic boss reveal. This guy's larger than life. Of course he's larger than a panel. Why would I keep a panel there? As for how I designed him with the plot twist at the end in mind, which you can look that up yourself because I'm not spoiling for people who want to watch this all the way through. Unless I already did and I just don't remember. But I'm not going to spoil it in this episode at least. But wait, actually I think I did spoil it. I'm not saying anything more. Anyway, for him, I took inspiration from the plot twist at the end, and more particularly, I took some inspiration from Hyun's monster form in Sweet Home. It's a webtoon that recently finished and got put behind Daily Pass, which means you can read one free episode a day. And oh my god, I didn't like that webtoon initially, but it got so good by the end. No spoilers there. But I took inspiration from there, because I wanted it to be similar to that. In the end, it didn't end up quite as similar. I ended up taking more from fantasy elf armor and a Mandalorian helmet from Star Wars. But you know what? It works. I was trying to get a natural feel, but I got a little too much of a natural feel and not enough of a villain feel. So I ended up going with purple, because the dark purple typically signify villainous kind of things. And it's kind of the opposite of the color palette I'm using, which is a lot of light, nice colors, not super saturated. Lots of oranges and greens and yellows. And then we've got this guy in full purple, and of course red, which is, classic evil color. But personally, I just really love purple, especially because I can take that purple later, and because color theory, I can change that purple, which is currently less purple and more indigo, but it looks like purple. And later I can add more red to it and make it a warmer color, which means that I can play with whether he's more villainous or more good based off my color choices, which is honestly what I was really hoping for when I decided to do color, which is I want to use color to indicate tone and shift in here. I'm not sure I did that super well with this page when transitioning from the first two panels below. I hope I made enough of a difference in the second panel, but I'm not sure of it. This is the first time I've tried such a drastic shift, and I hope it gets across that he's far away from that first panel, but I don't think it does. I really don't think it does. I think I really could have done this a bit more properly if I'd spread it out over 2 pages and had a little more time for him crawling up out of the water. But I just don't have time for that. I'm already behind by a day and a half. So that is not happening. I did go ham with the different effects and whatnot, especially the ones that Clip Studio already had built in. And I wanted that underneath the lighting just because I like backlighting, or lighting from underneath when it comes to villainous or dark characters. Just because then you don't have too much light, but you have enough light to more see them similarly to a silhouette, if that makes sense. I also added that sort of scaly texture later on because honestly, I felt like it just kind of went with his aesthetic of kind of corrupted, infected kind of vibe thing. I hope it works, but I just kind of cobbled it together last second. I think it looks good though, and you know what? That's what matters. I feel like the signature ended up looking a little out of place, since I didn't change the colors at all, but whatever. It's fine, everything's fine. We're all fine. Then we have the panels. I could have gone with the, your typical rectangular panels like I've been going with before, but I felt like the dynamics of having more angular panels just fit this page a lot better because it is a really dynamic page. So it just felt a lot nicer to have the panels that frame the full bleed panel. Oh, yeah, I think I worded that right. It felt better to have the panels that frame the full bleed panel be angular, essentially making a imaginary angular border on the full bleed panel. Purely because that makes that particular panel more dynamic. The more angular lines you have for a panel, the more dynamic it typically feels, but you also have to be careful of what you're doing with your panels, because angle them too much and the reader won't be able to figure out which panel comes first and what order they come in, which has been a problem for me several times over when reading different comics that don't have good panel format. Honestly, if you plan to do comics, you really do want to look into panel format and theory and figuring out where the reader's eye is going to go, because that's so important to the flow of a page. Like this page, I feel like it flows nicely because we have the full bleed page pointing upward toward the second panel on the top row, as well as downward toward the first panel on the bottom row, making between the panel shapes and the angle and position of the figure in the full bleed panel, it makes a Z looking shape on the page, which is exactly what you want, because then the reader will go from one panel to the next and onward. Another good tip that you can use is that if you have a character facing a particular direction, then that will also guide the reader's point of view. Like for example, I could have had a front view, or I could have had a view from the other side of the OC in the first panel, essentially making him look over to the left, or just straight at you, but that doesn't guide the page at all. By turning him slightly to the right, A, I've got a new position that I haven't used before. I didn't want two right side views. And B, he's now guiding the reader's gaze over to the next panel, just because those panels, because they're shifted left, instinctively make the reader's eyes try to go to the left. But by casting his gaze to the right, it makes the reader's eyes go to the right, because you want to know what he's looking at. So yeah, that's my little spiel on panel theory. I'll leave you to the rest of the video, and I will see you hopefully again today. Most likely tomorrow. Who knows?